Believe it or not, there's actually a few films that come to mind when talking about folk stories turning into mob stories. There's a good reason for it too, mainly because people die and characters are scummy. Hello, Danny here. Today I'm going to be talking about folk tales. You know those things that mothers tell to their misbehaving children in the hopes it scares them straight, but never did because I'm still smoking pot? Well, that's when folk tales were rebranded into a more mature light, which is honestly pretty easy. A good amount of well-known folk tales are pretty hardcore. You got Little Red, who gets eaten along with her grandma by a wolf, Hansel and Gretel, who killed a witch after eating her home, and, of course, Sleeping Beauty. Probably didn't feel so beautiful at the end there. Yeah, a lot of these stories weren't really PC, especially for kids, so today we're going to look at how some folk tales became a bit more suited for the adults in mind. The kids use Dare nowadays anyway, right? Did they rebrand? This is the part where I'd give a disclaimer, but honestly I don't think I need one since, this is me talking about entertainment media. In case you don't know because you were raised poorly, a folktale is a story that is passed down generation to generation. Your parents or something resembling one would tell you about the pebble and the penguin, the sword and the stone, and witch burning. The reason these stories stuck with us is just because how scary they could be. I mean, knights had to fight giant monsters, witches wanted to kill you as a child, but now that we've grown up, we realize that these things weren't actually bullshit because murderers and pedophiles are real, which is why when we have kids, we need to scare them from going outside at night, hell, even daytime. Don't let your kids outside, COVID-19 is still out there. Actually, I think we need a folktale for germs. Do we have one of those? Oh, okay, no need. We can be straight about those. Actually, we turned germs into something much more fun. Zombies. And by God, that became a genre. And apparently, so did folktale mob stories, because if germs can make a human reanimate, a little mermaid can become a prostitute. But let's keep it a bit more one-to-one and look at The Fox and the Crow. Originating from an Aesop's Fables, not the popular Grimm's fairy tale, this story is used as a warning against listening to flattery. Careful with gold diggers, pretty much. The OG story goes something like this. A crow has a piece of cheese, a delicious snack. Where it got it, who cares? It goes to a branch to enjoy it. A fox near the tree sees the crow holding some cheese in its beak. The fox wants to eat the cheese, so, in order for the fox to get the cheese, the fox tells the crow, "You look great. Do you sound great too?" And the crow lets out a caw, dropping the cheese, to which the fox eats up the cheese and the crow goes hungry. Or gets another slice, it's a crow, it can fly. So, how do you get a mob story out of this? Well, let's take a look at Le Corbeau et let regard by... What the fuck did I just say? I'm sorry, I can't speak French. Instead of starting with the crow, we begin with the fox, presumably a bachelor, having a nice night out alone. He came to the theater drunk and bought more while inside, and promptly assaulted a woman, getting his ass kicked out, although he did manage to sneak out one of her feathers. A few whiffs and he passes out on a park bench. What a player. We cut to the crow, who's got an absolutely massive beak, with an equally giant ego to match. Thinking its voice is the best thing ever, his hired goon loves it so much he wants it to be the last thing he ever hears. The crow has other hired hands waiting for instructions on a heist that they're planning, which works in my opinion. Crows like shiny things, which is jewelry. Crow and gang plan to rob the store at night, coming right around the time the guard goes to bed in the same room as the safe. Putting his meal inside the safe too, because employees stealing food is getting out of hand there. He's a God-fearing guard too. Not that that'll protect him much. Right as he goes to bed, he's knocked out. Necessary? No. Fun? Yeah. We then see the crows each do their part of the heist. One opens the door, another grabs the money, another guards, and the boss goes with a safe breaker to keep an eye out on the guard in case he wakes up, which he does. They do eventually break open the safe, but the crow, being greedy, decides to KO all of his hired guards and keep all the spoils to himself. The alarm eventually goes off after he accidentally knocks one out near the trip alarm. Thinking quickly, the crow sees the cheese in the safe and stuffs all the jewelry into it, pretending it's a mere snack, not the spoils of the getaway. He flies out of the building. The police down below open fire, assuming it's the robber, not a civilian fleeing, but miss every shot. Crow does get spotted by the dogs in the helicopter and is searched, but comes clean. Dogs then assuming anything is in the cheese, the crow gets away with it, sitting on a branch, tired but satisfied with his newly found riches. Right under the crow, the fox from the start of the cartoon, still asleep, only to be woken up by the cheese's scent. Waking up with a swig of booze, it sees the crow and the cheese, and begins to flatter the crow, saying all sorts of nice things, like nice shoes and stuff. Along with, I bet you sound great too, because shortly after the crow begins to sing, it drops the cheese, and like in the fable, the fox gets to eat it. The crow, after losing its cheese, its jewelry, and probably getting a bad reputation for assaulting his own hired hands, and plans just going entirely south, begins to weep. Although losing everything, the loser in the end is the drunken fox, because he's later caught by police. Which is alright, he was drunk in public and felt up a lady earlier in the night, so he kinda deserved it. And that's the fable turned mob story. It really isn't expanding on the fable itself, but more expanding on the characters around the main points of the fable. You could easily take out the mob stuff and just show the ending and you get the fable in less than a minute. This is just what I call, being creative. With only a few sentences to the original, George took it and spun it into a mob drama with alcoholism, betrayal, and egotism. That's how you make a cartoon, really. 3 sentences worth of plot, and filler all in between. This whole cartoon was filler, to keep your child quiet for a few minutes. Moral lesson not necessary. There's one more fairy tale turned mob story I can think of off the top of my head, and it's this. The Wolf Among Us. Bet you thought I was going to talk about this as the main topic. This one is probably the most well-known folktale turned mob story by combining all sorts of fables into a singular story about a murder mystery, with the big bad wolf, Brigby, being the center protagonist. This is actually based off the comic series Fables by Bill Willingham. So there we have it, a look at fairy tales turned mob stories. We no longer need those pesky lessons in our stories, just pure fun. Sure, we'll grow up morally stunted, but who cares? Also, we will no longer have to stick to kid cartoons, as there are plenty of fairy tales for adults now. But how do you even get from a fairy tale for kids to a mafia thriller for adults? Easy, just add material. There's no right or wrong, as long as the additions make it better or more fun. Those stories for kids are like 4 sentences long, just splurge it up and you'll be set. Anyways, I'm Danny, and I'll see you next time.